You're gonna see some serious shit.
It is the future. The year 2015. Okay, it's not as cool as we were promised, but it's not that different really. Instead of Jaws 19, we get Terminator Jenny CCs. It's the same thing really. We need to make a future for ourselves. A future where film lovers make film podcasts about why they love film. Where we stay positive no matter what the next batshit crazy Fantastic Four reboot rumor is. Come on guys, Star Wars and Mad Max are coming back. Brad Bird's got another movie out, Pixar have too. Stick with us folks and you'll always see the bright side of movies. Don't mind the title, it's just ironic. Welcome to Movie Moan 2015! Everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Movie Moan 2015. The general feedback seems to be that you're just glad we're back, that you like the new format, and that you watch it or you listen to it however and whenever you want. So I want to thank you all for your feedback. It's been really, really helpful. And now we just need to make sure that we don't drop the ball on this thing. To that end, we've got a packed show for you tonight. Later on, Mr. Spencer Perry and myself are going to be talking on Marveling at the Future about our hopes and dreams for Suicide Squad and Thor Ragnarok. Equal treatment to both Marvel and DC. And then I'll be joining up with Mr. Matt Thompson to discuss whether you can actually make a decent film out of the video game franchise Assassin's Creed. But right now, we've got some reviews of one truly great film. We've got a rant for the ages from yours truly on the Roger Ebert documentary getting snubbed at the Oscars. And we're going to discuss just how well is 50 Shades of Grey going to do at the box office. That's all coming up now on Classic Movie Moan. So joining me this week is the Ebert who I try to make sure is never snubbed. Certainly not by me, not by the show, or by the viewers. It's Mr. Jamie Williams.
Hello, sir. Hello, Gene.
And also, a guy who made such a great contribution on our first episode, and as far as I know, he's not left Skype since we recorded last. He's just been hanging about, stalking us in the internet corridor just to make sure he could get on the next episode, but why the hell not? It's Mr. Matt Thompson.
I'm out of witty things to say.
That's alright. You just need a break. That's what you need. Don't
Too much Skype.
And also, I am honoured, so honoured to say that we're not going to be doing this 50 Shades discussion without the benefit of someone who actually knows what they're talking about. No offence to Matt, but will you please welcome writer and editor for BoxOffice.com, Mr. Shawn Robbins.
Well, I've never had witty things to say, so you're one up on me, Matt.
Oh, Shawn, it's been too long, sir.
I know, I think the last show I did was probably the box office show last year.
Summer Results it was, because we couldn't together for a winter show. And probably a good thing too, because I don't think any of us would have called American Sniper, for one thing.
No.
Good God, no.
Oh, come on, guys. I totally had that making like 300 million plus. Who didn't?
I mean, this is insane. Can we just say that it's going to be 2014's #1 grossing movie? That's I think it's awesome because we fucking need surprises like that. It doesn't matter what you think about the movie. Like, it's just like we need to be like just showing like nobody knows anything. It's absolutely true, because who would have called that?
Well, I mean, the only thing I would say, Jamie, is what do you think the immediate reaction right now, or has already happened in the boardrooms of America as far as, okay, what do we do? What's our American Sniper? What do we make next? We get a bunch of sniper movies?
Oh, I don't think so at all. I think this. As I was telling you, gentlemen, off air. I think this is literally what happened to the Passion of the Christ, and to a lesser degree, Inception. Studio executives are going to look at that and go, "It's a fluke. Move on." They're not going to see this as a sign that people want to see, different kind of movies. They're going to say, "Look, that was a fluke. So we'll take all that money, but we're not going to start thinking of a new mark." No, indeed.
See, I actually disagree a little bit with you, Jamie. I think we're going to get a serious amount of America, fuck yeah, movies trying to capitalize on this.
By that account, Matt, then American Hustle should have been America, fuck yeah.
American Hustle wasn't an America fuck yeah movie, though. The Lone Survivor was.
I was trying to do it was a bad joke, man. I'm sorry. God.
You know what? Don't make jokes, Jamie. It's not your area.
Oh man, Matt's pretty cocky. Thinks he's the third wheel, the permanent third wheel on our show. Thinks he can replace Jamie.
Next week on Movie Moan, Phil and Jamie are gone, and we'll be presenting such topics as
hens love roosters, geese love ganders, everyone else loves
Matt Thompson.
Not me.
Everyone who counts loves
Matt Thompson. But let's not get sidetracked here, but I'd like to ask Shawn, actually, something that's been on my mind ever since Jamie, to give him his due, made a brilliant tweet. And I want to say it now, verbally on the show, so that even when it happens...
When it doesn't happen.
we can say Jamie called it. He's done it before. Jamie's especially good, I found, at predicting when movies are going to move release dates. He's done that before. Like, he called... What was that fucking movie that was going to come out at Christmas and then it moved?
Jack Ryan.
That's the one! Yeah, yep. God. And now Jamie has tweeted that he thinks that Mission Impossible 5, which is currently opening a week after Star Wars The Force Awakens on December 25th, even though you guys all go watch the movies on Christmas Day, that it's actually going to move to January, because January is where the big bucks are. So I want to ask Shawn, it seemed to me in days of old that there were certain months where the studios would just say, look, these are the months where we have movies that we know are going to make money, because these are the months when movies do make money, and there are also months where we dump shit. I thought January was the month where you dumped shit, but apparently that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, I mean... It's actually an interesting twist of fate, I think, because if we had been talking about Sniper doing this last year and Jack Ryan coming out right now, everybody would be thinking, well, we can't possibly move Mission Impossible to January. But, I think Jamie's right. I think they could move it. I don't think they should necessarily, but it'll probably end up playing if it stays in December, just like Avatar and Sherlock Holmes did. I mean, you can have two movies like that coexist with each other, but at the same time, movies like Sniper and Gravity, Hunger Games have proven you can open a big movie any time of year. It doesn't matter what month it is anymore.
People will find movies at this point.
That's absolutely true. But I think the problem is that there's a feeling of with Avatar, all of us here didn't expect it to do what it did. There was a mystery of like, there was this whole like, what the fuck's going to happen? We didn't know. With Star Wars, the question is, well, how big is it going to be? It's not that it's going to be big. It's the size. It's what kind of impact it's going to make. There will be an impact.
Yeah, the question with Star Wars is, does it make 400 million or does it make like 600 million?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we are at that point, and it's one of those rare kind of movies where we can actually say that with certainty. And so if you're a rival studio, you go, well, okay, how long do I need to move my thing away from that thing, from that path? And, you know, with MI5, it just doesn't make sense to say, hey, let's put it out a week later on Christmas Day. Like, yes, there's the logic of like, yeah, it's a big commercial movie, and I just think they're going to move it, man.
I'm starting to agree. Although I'd like to think with Star Wars, an additional conversation we might have in predicting it is it going to be any good? And I'd like to think that will be somewhat related to its box office. Call me crazy.
But unfortunately, I think people are just they're a little too on the predisposed side of saying, well, of course it will be good.
Well, maybe I should use the Indiana Jones 4 argument then. To me, it's like, you know, the movie obviously made huge amounts of bank and it was always going to. I think it could have made... It's scary to me to think how much more it could have made if it was actually any good.
Well, the thing with Indy 4,
yes,
and
no,
you
but
could be
people
right,
like
but Indy 4 sold just as many tickets as the last two did. I mean, it's right in the same range of Temple of Doom and Last Crusade.
But I can't be the only person who thought I was going to see that movie multiple times and I only saw it once. I can't be the only one out there.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, I guess it's just personal philosophy, but I still don't think most huge movies come down to repeat viewings. I really don't. I think it comes down to word of mouth and getting your friends to see it. I think most people don't see a movie twice. And I think huge box office comes from their friends going and their friends' friends going because they've heard it's good more than it is someone seeing a movie more than once themselves.
I completely agree with that. Agree with that. And the only time they see it again is when they buy the video.
Just to, like, backing up your point with movies like Twilight and Harry Potter, you know fans see those constantly. I mean, I know I saw Harry Potter 2 or 3 times because I'm a Potter fan, but that doesn't always translate to the masses when they're big movies, but it ultimately comes down to, you know, what your neighbor down the road who goes to see 4 movies a year, what he thinks or hears about it.
But
I think when it comes to Potter and Twilight, they're good indications of one where you have the fan base pre-built and one where it builds after the first movie. Harry Potter sort of maxed out its audience the second it came out, whereas Twilight came out, did well, but then everyone saw it, told their friends, and that's when the second movie opened huge.
That's right.
Whereas personally, when we're getting into later, I think 50 Shades of Grey is more like Harry Potter, where I think it's already kind of going to have maximum impact, and that's going to be it.
That's why, in a way, I think maybe this could be a way to segue to what Phil's about to get into. I think while it won't do as well, Kingsman will have the better legs, if you ask me. Pure guess on that part. I don't know.
I ain't so sure about that. But what I will say, folks, is that I'm certainly not going to go into much detail about it. I'd much rather prefer to wait until my esteemed colleagues have had a chance to see it. I think it's friggin' ridiculous you're having to wait that long, but hey-ho. I saw it today. Literally, I just came back from it in an exclusive preview. It opens here next week, not against 50 Shades, simply because I think Matthew Vaughn movies tend to do okay over here, so they'd rather actually give it a fighting chance. But I saw it, and I have to say, folks, I think it's average. Now, don't get me wrong, if we're talking about a star rating, I'll give it 3 out of 5, but no more than that. I think what this movie is 3 absolutely fantastic scenes, hanging off the bones of something which is decidedly average, has a pretty average story, and a whole collection of scenes that I have seen done better in countless other movies. That's really what it boils down to. It's not a very interesting story. It is better than the comic book, which I'm not a big fan of, and the big problem that I had with the comic book, which I can't really get into now because it will be spoiling things, but basically I had a big problem with one of the deaths of a character in that movie that felt very, very lazy and cheap to me. And in this movie, that problem is fixed, so that was okay. I also think, surprisingly, the thing that I thought was going to be the most boring element, and usually is in these movies, the villain, actually the strongest. Samuel L. Jackson plays a fantastic character in this movie. The lisp is genuinely funny, but he's also a really, really threatening and dangerous person who gets shit done and has a really good bad guy villain plot. So I really, really enjoyed that. I think the main problem with the movie for me is that the pacing is terrible. You have, for most of the movie, certainly the first 2 acts, 2 different stories running side by side. One is the actual James Bond movie where Samuel L. Jackson's trying to take over the world and the Kingsmen are trying to investigate the crime and stop it. And at the exact same time, running concurrently, you have the story of this young up-and-coming guy, Eggsy, who gets recruited into the Kingsmen and undergoes the world's most dangerous job interview. And that job interview goes on for I couldn't tell you how long it is. It must be 60 fucking minutes that plot line runs for. It is ridiculous. It's the kind of thing that really needs to be moving a lot quicker in order to get to the good stuff. The movie's a solid 2 hours, but I did feel the length of it at every point, and it's simply because those 2 different storylines do not mesh at all. We just keep intercutting between the 2, and it just doesn't flow. Once we get to the 3rd act, well, certainly the last 20 minutes, it gets fun, and most of the best scenes of the movie and the funniest parts are in that. Most of the rest of the humour in the movie, unfortunately, it really comes down to people saying fuck and fucking in East London accents, and they think swearing is cool. Personally, I think that's kind of juvenile, and it doesn't really do much for me. It's the kind of Guy Ritchie snatch humour mentality that I guess Vaughan hasn't shaken off. I like Vaughan's movies. In fact, later on, we're going to talk about Matthew Vaughan in another context, me and Spencer. We'll get onto that later. But I do think this is his weakest movie. If I had to do a thumbs up or a thumbs down, begrudgingly, I'm going to give it a thumbs down.
Wow.
Yeah. And to answer Jamie's question, no, I don't think it's going to have legs at all. I think I just don't see it. I certainly have no desire to ever see it again.
Phil, Fox is screening the hell out of this. They've been screening this since December, or maybe even earlier than that. That's a sign of a studio that's either very confident or confident but shaky because they want to get the word out. I mean, they let the embargo lift a month ago.
The big problem with Vaughan's movies are that the most brilliant scenes literally can't be broadcast. Except in a red band trailer. That's the big problem with it. And you've probably heard about this on there's this one absolutely amazing scene that you've never seen before. I wouldn't go that far, but it is a fantastic scene. I would say the church scene, that's the one, yes. But there are also 2 other really, really effective scenes. One involving dogs. That's all I will say about it. But it was quite shocking, quite tense, because it really plays into people's love of cute dogs. I will say no more about that. And also,
Phil, I'm the guy who doesn't like Mad Max 2 specifically because they killed the dog. I'm that kind of guy. Will I be upset?
I couldn't possibly tell you.
He's not telling. I'm not saying anything. Okay, fair enough.
I could be wrong. Here's the thing, everyone's entitled to their opinion. The people who are high on it, I don't doubt that they had a better time than me. Maybe it's just that I've seen too many variations on this story at this point. Maybe that's what it is. I can assure you folks, it's not because I'm a Bond snob and I will not dare say that anything replaces my beloved Bond. We've been talking about the fact that we thought this movie might end up better than Spectre. I will tell you now, I'm not so sure. Spectre better be better than this.
Don't worry, there's always the man from U.N.C.L.E. And I'm not even kidding when I say that.
No, that's true. There's that too. Yeah. The other movie that we're going to talk... Oh, excuse me, folks, I'm out of breath. And quite rightly so, because this movie took my breath away. It really, really did. The only depressing thing about Whiplash is that I think I've already seen my favourite film of this year. I know technically it's a 2014 movie, but you know how it works, folks. I've gone into this. We get these movies all dumped on us in one go in January. And I tell you, this is a film which I thought I had a handle on, and then it kept changing shape every 10 minutes into something even more delicious. For those of you who don't know, Whiplash is the story of a teenager played by Miles Teller who gets accepted into one of the most prestigious music schools in America, Schaefer Conservatory, with the hopes of earning a living as a jazz drummer. And he gets that chance when he's spotted by Schaefer's most demanding and fearsome teacher, played by J.K. Simmons. There's just one problem. He's played by J.K. Simmons. This isn't Goodbye Mr. Chips or Dead Poets Society. This is about a relationship between a student and a teacher, which is one of the most fascinating and complicated I've ever seen. It swings constantly between a student who wants to earn the respect of his peer, to a teacher who wants to tear him down psychologically, to the student having the biggest desire to kill another human being that I've ever seen on an actor's face. He wants to kill his teacher, but it seems he might hate his condescending family even more than that. At some point he wants a normal life with his girlfriend. And then at another point, after several months of utter torture, by the way, at the hands of this teacher, he actually has a greater desire than ever to be a great musician and to give everything else up. Dumps the girlfriend, dumps her in minute 30, I think. And then, when he finally achieves what he hoped he would with this teacher, the teacher takes it all away, and the student is left with literally nothing but the broken bones he gets from a car crash that was caused because he was fixated on getting to the orchestra on time. And that's just the first half of the film. Before I even go into the rest of it, Shawn saw the movie too. Shawn, what kind of impression has this one left on you?
You know, I was really taken back because I used to be in band back in like school. I was a band geek, and I never had a teacher like that. But it's, I mean, no, it really, you could see how that it was entirely believable because I'm sure there are really teachers like that. And I mean, really, I haven't seen anybody bring as much energy to the screen this year as Simmons. Maybe, definitely no one more. He really blew me away, and I actually think Miles Teller deserves some credit for that role. And I don't think he's getting enough. And he's still a kid, you know, relatively speaking, compared to veteran actors. But that he impressed me, and maybe even more because I had high expectations for Simmons going in. I knew I was going to see a performance I probably won't forget. Teller, on the other hand, I don't have anything against him, but I've never seen him in a role like that. I haven't seen Spectacular Now, so I hadn't seen him in a dramatic role like that. And between the two of them and just the subject matter itself, I was already hooked. It's going to stick with me for a while, I think.
I think Teller's fantastic in the movie, and I'd like to point out to people, you might be getting this impression from what I've described so far or from the trailer, but this isn't the case where the teacher's the devil and the student's a saint. No, Miles Teller plays a character far more complicated than that. There's plenty of times where you're going to hate him too. He's a complete douchebag at part of this movie, and that's far more brave and interesting. And of course, I can't give all the credit to Miles, he's just playing the part as it's written, but still, I believe Teller does deserve a lot of credit. It wasn't till the end credits were running that it actually clicked to me, Shawn. Oh yeah, he's playing Reed Richards in the Fantastic movie. I forgot. Yes, that's who it is. Because I get him confused with like guys like Logan Lerman. I think Logan Lerman is like 10 years older or something. I get confused with these guys.
No, he's just 10 years old. It's not. You got a little mixed up there.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. But you know, I haven't seen Miles Teller in anything else before. But based on this, I mean, I'm looking forward to what he's doing next. I think
he tells me he's going to want you to forget he's in Fantastic Four.
I'm expecting that. We're all expecting that.
Yeah, exactly.
Big Black Rock, folks. Never forget. But I want to say... we still haven't forgotten. I want to say that... I don't know about you, Shawn. I'm not even sure how much I want to go into what happens in the second half of the movie. Because... See, here's the thing, folks. I'll explain it like this. The film decides to play us like an instrument and manipulate every expectation that we would have of where this story would go. And the film dangles us with movie cliches like a potential courtroom scene that never happens, a reconciliation with the girl of his dreams that never happens. And then a second chance for the student, for Miles, to grab his dreams before they get ripped away again in the climax of the movie. And the climax of this movie is about two men absolutely determined to destroy each other in front of a public crowd. And before even that becomes too cliche for the film, in its final few minutes it becomes something more complicated than that. It actually lets you, the viewer, decide what's going on in these two characters' heads. Is this a film about two obsessives in a deadly battle where one must triumph at the end and vanquish his opponent? Or is it a film about the person you hate the most actually being the most influential driving force in your life, who you are forever indebted to, and what may be perceived as raw, seething hatred might actually be nothing more than plain and simple respect? You'll be thinking about that when you come out of this movie, I guarantee it. So I'd just like to extend my congratulations to director Damien Chazelle. He has made a very special film. He has just turned 30. Think about that. I hope his best days are still in front of him, but if they're not, I'm still going to thoroughly shake his hand for, what I do believe is going to be my favourite film of this year. That was my Gene Siskel impression for the night. Roger, Shawn, anything else you'd like to say about...
You know what, you explained it far better than I could hope. I won't talk in specifics, but that the final 20 minutes or so, I'm really not sure if I blinked during that time. I don't know. When the credits rolled, my eyes were tearing up, not because I was sad, but just they were so dry. I have not been that fixated on a scene in a while, and most of the time I would worry that I'm overhyping that. This is one movie I don't think, if you're a fan of good character-driven stories, I don't think you can overhype the level of intensity that they reach between them and as actors, and even in terms of directing. It really was. I'm probably with you. If it's not my favorite of the year, it is easily one of my favorites.
And I also just want to finally recommend something to people. I know you might get the impression, because it's a small-scale story, that you don't have to catch it theatrically. And if you have missed it, and I know it's a limited release, folks, so not all of you will be able to catch it, but if you can, even if it's out of town, if Whiplash is within your grasp right now, I certainly say this to my friends in the UK, go and see it. Go and see it with an audience. You want to experience this film with a crowd. You all want to have that collective experience that I had and that Shawn had, where a film immediately grabs you and does not let you go. That's the kind of thing that I long for every time I go into a movie theatre, and that's what Whiplash delivered. So I hope you'll enjoy it. Don't let me down. Go and see it. Don't pirate. No Oscar screeners, guys. I want you to pay for it. Won't pay for it. Now, at this point, I'm going to catch a breath. I feel like Miles, and I'm going to let actually Shawn take the lead on a discussion that we have been putting off for far too long. By the time I guess our next episode airs, 50 Shades of Grey will probably have rolled out worldwide on Valentine's Day. The question is, with a movie like this, with the most talked about controversial movie of the year, it's fucking January still, but whatever, just how well, Shawn Robbins, writer and editor for boxoffice.com, just how well is 50 Shades of Grey gonna do opening weekend, domestically, worldwide, overall?
Ooh, no pressure. A lot of money. That's the answer. It kind of reminds me of Da Vinci Code a little bit. It's a controversial book that a lot of people are saying they really have no interest in seeing, but they're either gonna go see or they're gonna get dragged to see. In the case of a lot of guys, I would imagine. I really think it could probably do Twilight, the original Twilight numbers, domestic. I think that was about 70 opening weekend, and it opens over Valentine's and President's Day, so it gets a 4-day weekend. So it's gonna hit some bigger numbers, I think. I don't think we'll quite see American Sniper numbers, but at the same time, who saw that coming? So I don't know. I think we're kind of, usually at this time of year, it's a dead lay of the land for movies. But every few years, you have a really strong movie do well early on, and it kind of sets the tone, and then you get more and more hits. And I think the last time that happened was probably 2009, because you had Taken and Paul Blart, just a bunch of movies doing well that you didn't think would. And then I think that eventually carries over and makes the big movies even bigger than they probably already would be. So, maybe 50 Shades kind of falls into that same line. I think it's already going to do well, but it seems like people are really in the mood to go to the movies right now. So, conservatively, I think it could do 175 domestic in all, maybe 200, depending on how well it turns out. The thing is, I really have no idea what's in the book. I know it's controversial, but I've steered away from details, not necessarily on purpose. I just don't know anybody that's read it. So, I'm curious. You guys probably know more than I do about the actual content of it.
I'm not sure what you're implying, Mr. Robbins, but I don't read this filth.
Not that you've read it, but you might have heard things.
I saw a headline recently about a tampon scene that has been cut
Saw
from the
that.
film.
Really?
Which
Okay.
I don't know what that means. I'm like, is it something that your dog does sometimes? I mean, like, it's your dog, it's just now, some girl does it. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea what to expect. I actually am going to quote, I'm paraphrasing my best friend Chip on this one, who said, men are going to go, he said, no, men aren't going to get dragged into seeing this, Jamie. You're completely wrong. They're going to go willingly because they want to go get laid that night. I'm pretty much in the same ballpark as Shawn. I think we're looking at a 70 to maybe even 80 opening weekend, although apparently some of the early tracking is pointing at 50. I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and he doesn't agree with the tracking. He actually thinks that they're kind of being off on this one, that maybe, as you said, Shawn, people aren't willing to admit they want to go see it, or that they are going to go see it. This tracking, we know, is a flawed system. Phil seems to have it. So you don't think it's going to be as big, Phil? Or because we've been fighting about this for weeks, and you say like you're going to bring down the real argument as to why this isn't going to do well. So I'm curious to hear it, sir.
Well, I hate to disappoint you. I've kind of mellowed on it since, simply because I feel like...
Because he saw Kingsman.
No, that's not fair. No, it's simply because...
I'm picking.
No, I mean, it really goes back to something we were talking about before, where, I have a different opinion on how box office works overall, not opening weekend, but overall domestic totals, worldwide totals, foreign totals, than Matt does. Matt believes it's all about people who go to see the movie once, word spreads, and you make your money from there. It's not about multiple views. For me, I feel a little bit differently. I see a movie in 50 Shades which I have no faith in its quality, and that's another thing about me. I am one of those prudes who believes quality equals box office, and I know there's so many examples that disprove that rule, but with 50 Shades I feel like a movie, okay, yeah, it's going to open big, no doubt about that, but it looks like a terrible movie. The trailer's more interested in selling that Beyonce song than it is the fucking movie itself, and I feel like it's just going to sink like a stone in the second week. But even if that's true, by Matt's reckoning, I'm wrong. But I don't honestly see... I don't see a $200 million grosser here. I don't see anything like that. I'd say like 150 max. But even then, I'm just not so sure. And I'm just not sure that people... I'm so confused about the reaction to the book, because common sense would dictate everyone who's ever told me about the book has immediately followed it up by saying, but it's shit, it's terrible, it's just porno, it's just filth. But, I was talking to Spencer about this the other night, and he said, yeah, people are still going to go, and you were saying that too, so I feel like, well...
Well, that's filth, that's porno, but we've all here watched porno, so it's like,
No, absolutely, but...
Don't shrug your shoulders, people listening. You know you have. It's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying we've all watched our fair share of pornography.
Of course. It's just a question...
That's not meant to be like me imitating Fred Willard from Anchorman, by the way. I really mean that. By the way.
It's just a question of whether you're willing to publicly go up to somebody at a kiosk and buy a ticket for this movie. And admit it, that's right, yes.
Phil, in terms of the second weekend drop, I think the difference is you see it as it will drop in the second weekend because people won't like it, whereas I think it'll drop in the second weekend purely because everyone who wants to see it will see it in the first weekend. And I find that to be kind of an important difference. Shawn mentioned it has President's Day, so I'm using 2 touchdowns here, oddly enough. In terms of big opening plus President's Day, I'm actually using Friday the 13th, 2009, because I feel like you have a big audience that will rush to see it. And I'm also using Magic Mike. which was kind of huge for the similar audience, wasn't based on anything. But Magic Mike, with no previous sort of thing, it's not based on anything, but purely on the, oh my god, girls want to see it, opened to $19 million and dropped 40% on its first Saturday. So now we have 50 Shades, which is kind of attracting the same people, but is based on something that will cause even more front loading. My prediction for it is something like 40 million, 45 million opening day, 80 million over President's Day, and like $150 million total. I think it opens huge and then just boom drops. Yeah, just I think big. Oddly enough, again, I know it's a completely different genre of movie, but in terms of bringing people in front loaded with this exact setup, I really think Friday the 13th, 2009 is a good indication of this, because that movie opened to like, what was it, 40? It opened to $40 million and it finished with 65. And I just think we're looking at a similar type of situation.
So do you agree with, just to ask Master a question here, do you agree with me about the quality of the film? Do you think it's going to be as bad as I think so?
I don't know. Look, it's based on Twilight sex fan fiction. I am not confident in its quality when it's literally fan fiction with different names. But I don't think the quality is really going to matter one way or another in terms of how much the film makes. I really don't. I think the audience knows they're going to see it. I don't think there are people on the fence thinking, maybe I'll see it. Everyone already knows whether they're going to see it or whether they're not going to.
Do you know what else I predict? I'm thinking about this. It feels to me like the kind of movie where people are going to walk out and they're going to say, that wasn't porno enough. That wasn't strong enough, because obviously it's all... And I like, by the way, I always like trailers that hold something back, that always say, you don't know what's behind the door, you know. And I like trailers that try and have a hook, even though it seems clear to me it's only bondage gear. I don't get what the point is. But if it's holding something back that I'm not aware of because I haven't read it, well, that's absolutely fair enough. But, you know... It needs to have something. It needs to be sexy if it's going to work. I know the movie's about sex, but it also needs to be sexy. They're two different things, and I just don't know about that.
To go back to the Friday the 13th analogy, which is fantastic, by the way, Matt. I forgot completely about that movie, as did everybody else, by the way. Okay, so that happens. Let's just say, okay, so that does happen. Do they do another one? Is that considered a success?
They haven't made a Friday the 13th
Yes. Yeah.
Or the girl who played Fire.
Well, that didn't even open well. I mean, that's the problem with that movie. That didn't even open well. I mean, that was fucked from the moment.
Yeah, Jamie, you're saying, like, if this opens really, really highly and then tanks, do you go off the high opening weekend, or do you think, oh god, nobody liked it, and make another one?
Yeah, exactly. Do you make another one off that, or you just say, you know what, we made our money back, let's just stop while we're ahead?
I'm sure you do, just because these movies can't be overly expensive. The reason they didn't make another Friday, or at least haven't so far, is because Platinum Dune's horror films are ridiculously expensive compared to everyone else's. Friday the 13th 09 cost like $20 million, which for a slasher film is a little ridiculous. Whereas I haven't seen 50 Shades budget, but I can't imagine it's much more than, leather.
They were saying, I think their official quote is 40, isn't it?
Well, 40's fine. Much. I mean, this will make
that sounds reasonable.
I would be more concerned about star chemistry, because they were both at the Golden Globes and they looked like they were robots who had never seen each other before.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I'm really going to believe their intimate moments.
That was another thing. I mean, first of all, I will preface this by saying I feel so sorry for those two actors, because I know people say, yeah, they knew what they were getting into, they're getting paychecks or whatever. Well, yes, I know that. But yeah, that's you. But I also don't think that anybody should have to put up with the kind of scrutiny and the kind of horrible, asinine questions that these guys are going to get asked on the press junket for this thing. I don't envy them at all.
Penis was not up to snuff with the book character.
It's, well, whatever. I mean,
Ben Affleck's penis was better in Gone Girl. I'm just going to say it right now.
I didn't see Affleck's penis in Gone Girl. I'm sorry. I can't.
But that is the kind of thing I imagine them asking. They're going to be like, so, did you see everything? I really, yeah, exactly. I have no opinion of junket journalists, obviously. I apologise for that. But that's what I kind of think. So I feel sorry for them in that regard. But
will the unrated Blu-ray have penetration shots?
See, that's the other thing. This is just a trailer for a Blu-ray that's got a harder cut on it. You know that's fucking happening too. So I'm not in full for this. I might not see it for that reason.
The Steel Cage edition. It'll be some shit like that.
Unchained.
uncuffed.
It made 200 million worldwide, but now you can masturbate in your own home to 50 Shades of Grey, the even harder cut.
Are there going to be a lot of widespread arrests, like Paul Rubens style, like at screenings and stuff? Is that going to happen?
Well, he was masturbating in a porno theater. I don't think that's a...
Yeah, but isn't this a porno movie?
Well, this is like Caligula, like this is the porno movie gone legit. It's like a little bit of a prestige on it. Well, even though that's such a seedy picture.
Who masturbated to Caligula, Phil?
I guess no, but I don't know anybody.
I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, but Phil always describes me. I was like, how extreme can it be by today's standards? And you always look at me and go, just watch it. That's all you say. You just say, I'm not going to tell you anything.
50 Shades won't have Roman orgies in it, as far as I know.
That's the sequel.
Well... Moving on, I guess. I mean, we don't...
It's okay if I ask one more question, Phil? It's sort of semi-related because Matt brought it
up. No, I'm not seeing it with you. Are you ready for a rant, guys? Because I am pissed off. I am going to beg your pardon in advance for this, and I'm going to ask my esteemed colleagues here to just give me the floor for a couple of minutes, which is code for Jamie, shut up. I just need a couple of minutes to say what's on my mind, because this story broke about 10 days ago, but it still gets my blood pressure up. I have a couple of things that I just need to say. As most of you know, I'm sure, the nominations for this year's Academy Awards are out, containing virtually no surprises in the nominees, as usual, and probably will be no surprises in the winners either. The only surprises are in the films that were snubbed. Chief among them, Life itself, the warm, hilarious, entertaining, and incredibly moving documentary on the life and final months of the world's most well-known and respected film critic, Roger Ebert. Life itself was my favourite film of 2014, and it is true that this is the closest we'll probably ever get to Siskel and Ebert the movie, 2 thumbs up Siskel and Ebert, and I was always probably going to say that film when they made it was my favourite of the year, but I can also honestly say that beyond the film being a celebration and an uncompromising biopic on one of my favourite human beings, it is also a wonderful look at life and death, on just how fragile life can be, on how we face the Reaper with dignity on our own terms, and what it was like to live the life of someone who breathed film. It's also, I think, the most positive film about critics that's ever been made. We're talking about a human being here whose love for film was so contagious that he actually inspired people as children to become filmmakers. There's a story in the movie about that. It's a film that's always going to remind us that Roger Ebert's contribution to cinema must not be understated. Have I made my points? It's a superb film, and nobody can tell me that it was not worthy of a nomination for Best Documentary at the Academy Awards. But we're not doing this segment because I'm angry that my favourite film of last year is not being represented at the supposedly ultimate celebration of the best of the year in cinema. That's not what this is about. I wanted to examine the circumstances behind this film, behind its subject, behind its director. It opens up a world of fascinating topics that I thought we should discuss, mostly because I still don't get why the film hasn't been nominated. So let's look at the charges, shall we? Number 1. Is this about snubbing the film's director, Steve James? The reasons for the snub, and part of the reason the film Life itself got made, actually goes back some 20 years when a filmmaker called Steve James made a feature documentary called Hoop Dreams about 2 inner-city Chicago teenagers who James filmed for 5 years as they pursued their dreams of becoming professional basketball players. A wonderful film that I found out about because Siskel and Ebert told me to see it, because they said it was an amazing film, and it was their favourite film of that year. It was Ebert's favourite film of the 90s, period. But Siskel and Ebert spent more time talking about Hoop Dreams on their show than perhaps they'd planned, because the film was snubbed at the Academy Awards. They felt strongly that Hoop Dreams should be nominated for Best Picture, never mind Best Documentary. Hoop Dreams wasn't even nominated for Best Documentary. They knew something stunk. Hoop Dreams, it turns out, was deliberately excluded from the nominations because the documentary board that voted at the time, they knew it would win. And they wanted to promote lesser-known films. And so the stink that Siskel and Ebert kicked up, not to mention all the journalists, by the way, actually led to reform changes in voting for the Best Documentary category. At the time, the board consisted of just older Academy members, retirees who have enough time in the year to watch hundreds of hours of documentaries that come out in any given year. And since then, actual documentary filmmakers have been allowed to join the board, people who actually know the medium. But the question has to be asked, if the documentary board was reformed, why are we seeing a repeat now of the same shitty situation? Charge 2. Is this about snubbing Ebert himself? As horrifying as it is to contemplate that something so shitty could be done, we have to ask the question. Ebert was extremely critical of the Academy, and especially the documentary board, during the Hoop Dreams fiasco. Is this a grudge that's still held? I can only hope not, but I would not be surprised. Charge 3. Let's play devil's advocate and say Life Itself was not a great movie, just an average one. You'd still think it would get nominated. You know that old line, we're all part of the same hypocrisy? Well, that's the Oscars in a nutshell. How many films over the decades have been nominated or won for reasons which had nothing to do with the quality of the film itself, or the classic, we need to give that actor or director a trophy because they really should have one by now, so we'll give it to them this year even though we all know they didn't give the best performance or make the best film this year. If you go by that adage, that the Oscars nominate and award people sometimes just to celebrate their contribution to film, then how in the name of Greek buggery can you not seize this opportunity to pay final respect and homage to Roger fucking Ebert, who has done so much for the industry? I do not get it. Final point, folks. Final charge. I was reminded of something that Ebert said during the Hoop Dreams fiasco. One of the reasons that it wasn't nominated, ironically, was because it was a film, not just a documentary. The documentary board, he said, were in love with stock footage and talking heads, TV documentaries, and Hoop Dreams was a living, breathing, 3-hour fly on the wall, took you into the realities of American life kind of picture. So if we go by that adage that the board still, let's say, loves talking heads and stock footage, well, if we had to be completely honest, a lot of Life Itself is talking heads and stock footage. It has to be. When we're talking about the early years of Roger's life, there's no archive footage, sadly, just the photos and memories of the people who remember him. So again, it doesn't make any sense. So those are my points, guys. I am frustrated. I do not get it. I am depending on people much smarter than me to tell me why this has happened. That's your cue, Williams.
Oh, me? Shit, I don't know what to say, because I think you covered it all. I think it's the filmmaker himself. I mean, that guy's been snubbed quite a few times, and to me, this is the biggest snub of the Oscars, because, you know, the thing about a snub is that you don't see it coming, and I know everyone's bitching and whining about Selma, which apparently is a great movie. I do want to see it. I've never had the time to. But I knew it wasn't going to win, and I knew it wasn't going to get that many nominations, specifically because the guilds shut it out. And that's another argument for another day. So I knew, like, it's not going to get that many nominations. If it gets picture, it's lucky, and it got picture, so people should be happy for that at least. But Life Itself is, I don't understand. That is a weird one.
Hey, Phil, here's the thing, though. If you want Life Itself to be nominated, you have to remove another nominee. I mean, this is a very iconic group of categories this year. Would you remove, wait, Crisis, Hotline, Veterans Press 1? Wait, no, that's short. Or Boogaloo and Graham? Everyone loved that movie. What about Pervana? Which one are you going to remove, Phil?
That sounds like a 30 Rock fake sketch, by the way.
Okay, well, bypassing your sarcasm, Matt, what I would say about that is that is true. That does bring up a point that obviously I have not had a chance yet to see the other documentaries. The argument that Siskel and Ebert made at the time of the Hoop Dreams fiasco is that they did say, look, we haven't seen all the documentaries that have been nominated, but we've seen one of them, and no one who could tie their shoes together could say that film was better than Hoop Dreams. I would like to think, even though I'm talking from a place of sheer ignorance, I cannot believe that any one of those films nominated is better than Life itself. And also, that's why I made point 3. Even if you just go for the hypocrisy argument, oh, we're going to nominate Life itself because we love Roger, to me that's a good enough reason. They've done it enough times before, and I feel kind of filthy saying that because that means I'm buying into the hypocrisy just to support a film I like. I'm fully aware of that.
Sure, look at Meryl Streep. Let's vote for somebody just because we like them. It's like, look at how many goddamn
Exactly.
times Meryl Streep's been nominated. I mean, was she really one of the best supporting performances?
You hold
here?
your tongue into the woods is amazing.
Well, I'm glad that, you're not as angry about this as me. I mean,
It's the Academy. I mean, what do you expect?
No, see, that, Jamie, that right there, that is apathy. That's what that is. Every year they do this kind of shit and we just go, oh, well, it's the Academy. Yeah, it is the Academy. It's the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and fucking Sciences. It's some film.
Yeah, you know what? But who are they to say what the best movie is? Because honest question
True.
for everybody here. How many times has the Academy voted for Best Picture for a movie that you happen to think was the best, like that was your favorite movie that year? It's happened like twice for me.
I generally just like the Academy to get in the ballpark. Like, for instance, my favorite film in 2010 was The Social Network, whereas The King's Speech actually won. It didn't bother me because even though it was light and fluffy, I enjoyed The King's Speech enough that I was like, you know what, okay, I'm fine with it.
There's a debate to be had there.
Yeah, there's always going to be a debate to be had there. At a certain point, as long as we're not talking Crash level of screw-up, I'm generally okay as long as I find that the awarded film was at least exceptional at what it was doing. And I do think mostly they pick films, even if they're fluffy, that are at least very good at what they're trying to do.
Bottom line is, and the biggest joke of this for me is, I never watch the Oscars anyway. And I've said this for years, but since we're a rebooted podcast, I will say it again. I love film. I love talking about film. I love talking about film with you guys. Films from the past, films to come. I love it. I hate talking about the Oscars. Nothing drains my enthusiasm and passion for film more than talking about the fucking Oscars, and yet it's supposed to be the ultimate celebration of the best achievements in film. I don't know if it's a problem with me or a problem with them, but this show will not watch the Oscars. This show will not discuss the Oscars when the smoke clears. And after this, I hate them more than ever, if that's possible.
So if you like, on Oscar night, I can go outside the red carpet and hold up a Life Itself sign. Of course. Work pen.
But you've got to do it like Bruce Willis in Die Hard 3. You've got to wear a sandwich board. You've got to be wearing nothing on
But
top.
it has to be the TV version of
Yes.
Die Hard, where it says,
exactly.
He hates everyone! Oh, how can he hate everyone? Thanks, Matt. That cheered me up. Thanks, I appreciate it. Okay, folks, so now let's go into the world of fantasy. Let's take our minds off all this reality shit. Let's go into marveling at the future. Hello folks, it's Marveling at the Future time. We cover the world of comic book media adaptation. Film or TV, we cover it. Marvel or DC, we cover it. Equal treatment, that's the rule. But we pick and choose the stories that we want to cover, and we have the luxury of doing that. And it's a good thing too, because it's slim pickings right now. We're still waiting for that Fantastic Four trailer and that Spidey summit that was supposed to happen. So tonight instead, we're going to talk about the future. That's what we do here. We're going to talk about two upcoming comic book movies, one DC, one Marvel, and our hopes and dreams for how they're going to turn out. Suicide Squad and Thor Ragnarok. Joining me as always, writer and editor for SuperheroHype.com, author of Spencer's Soapbox on SuperheroHype.com, a new article every Friday, folks. It's Spencer Perry.
Hey everyone, how's it going? What's
on Spencer's Soapbox this week, Mr. Spencer Perry?
This week is all about the lack of superhero video games, because as I noted in the article, of the top 10 movies of 2014, 5 of them, at least 5 were superhero movies. It's 6 if you count the Lego movie, and it's 7 if you bump it up to the top 11 movies of 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that many movies that are superheroes just dominating movies, why do we only get about maybe 1 or 2 superhero video games a year?
I'll throw a guess at you. I mean, it feels to me like they're only willing to make superhero licensed games when there is a movie tie-in to happen to ring around it, and it's a movie licensed game. And I'm just seeing that not many people are making movie licensed games, period, anymore. I guess nobody buys them.
And, I can't recall the last big superhero movie that had its own video game. I think it was X-Men Origins Wolverine. No, Amazing Spider-Man 2 had one last year. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it did.
But it was totally different from the movie, too.
Yes, it was. I've seen some clips of it. That's all I know. Maybe it's snobbish of me to form an opinion on it, but I feel like having seen those clips, I got a pretty good idea what happened with that one. Problem with that is that they're still chasing Spider-Man 2's tail. It feels like they hit a peak 10 years ago, mind you, with the Spider-Man 2 game, and they just haven't been able to hit it ever since. It's weird like that. But that kind of makes sense, Spencer. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I realised, and I couldn't figure out why, when the Phase 1 Marvel Studios movies came out, they had a game for every single one, and as far as I know, they were all crap. And then, after Captain America, it stopped. You'd think the Avengers would have a game, and it never did. And we haven't had a game since.
It was planned, but, for some reason or another, they cancelled it, so...
That's so weird. I'll tell you what really irks me, folks. They were going to make a Daredevil game, and they canned that. Do you remember that, Spencer?
No, I don't.
Yeah, no, it's actually, I believe it is on YouTube. There are some, and again, it wasn't actually going to be a movie adaptation game, but it was going to be coming out at the same time as the movie. It's going to be the year of Daredevil, was 2003, and yeah, they just canned it. I think they did a Daredevil game for the Game Boy Advance, but I didn't own that, so I didn't get to play that. I would buy a Game Boy Advance just to play a Daredevil game because I'm that much of a fan, but yeah, I'm short this week, so I'm not going to do that. But I hope we get one. I'd love a Daredevil game.
Oh, that'd be so great, yeah.
Well, I hope we talk about that at some point, but we always I think a nice idea, folks, is that we take inspiration from Spencer's Soapbox articles to talk about things on the show, but I like those articles to sit on the web for a little while. I like people to read them, to formulate comments, formulate their own opinions, and then we'll come in with some closing sermons about it. So on that thought, a couple of weeks ago, Spencer launched Spencer's Soapbox with an article on Warner Brothers' Suicide Squad movie and why it's so important. Certainly, as far as comic book movie news, it's the one that's in the news right now because of all the casting race that's going on, that Tom Hardy has dropped out of the picture. I did a triple take when I first found out he was even going to be in it, so I'm not entirely shocked that he's not going to be anymore. But we're not going to talk about casting races here, that's boring. We're just going to talk about the movie, why it's so important, and what we hope and dream it's going to be. But first of all, Spencer, what the fuck is Suicide Squad?
Well, Suicide Squad has an interesting history because it started, I believe its first publication, it was first appeared in a publication in the 50s. And back then it was just sort of a military group. It was regular people, no superpowers or anything, but they would go up against maybe villains that had superpowers, or maybe dinosaurs, or sort of a pulpy title, more of an adventure.
I just love how offhand Spencer said that. They'd occasionally fight some dinosaurs if they were in the mood.
Well, you know how these things work in comic books. Sometimes there are dinosaurs.
True. It's true.
In the late 80s, a comic book writer named John Ostrander rebooted the Suicide Squad, but he did it in a different way. He took the name, but it kept the name, but changed it up to where it was supervillains that were working to not necessarily redeem themselves like Marvel's Thunderbolts, but to they were placed on this squad to serve as penance for their punishment. So if they served for so long on the Suicide Squad, they would be able to walk out free men from however long their sentence was. So, say for instance Deadshot, who has been a member since it was first sort of rebooted, say he was in prison for 50 years for whatever nefarious thing he might have done. If he serves on the Suicide Squad for 5 years, then once that's done, he doesn't have to serve his 50 years. So, and the name comes from the fact that they take on missions that should result in their death. So, hence the name Suicide Squad.
It's delicious. It is a delicious premise, and the more I thought about it after Spencer's article, and I did some reading on it, and I just realised that, see, my ignorance led me to think, oh man, this is Thunderbolts, but basically they're beating Thunderbolts to the punch because Marvel Studios isn't doing Thunderbolts yet, and I'll talk about Thunderbolts in a little bit. But I realised, yeah, Spencer's right, it's not really about that, it's about something really, really cool. See, Thunderbolts, folks, and what I love about Thunderbolts is Thunderbolts are a bunch of heroes that come into the Marvel universe when all of the Marvel superheroes are dead. You can't see me, but I'm doing dead in inverted commas because you know what that means in the Marvel universe. But they're basically MIA. So this new superhero team comes in, which look pretty boring, but they're really, really cool and cocky, and they love attention. And so they actually bask in the adoration that the public gives them, and then it turns out that they are actually supervillains. They are Baron Zemo and the Masters of Evil, and they have basically hoodwinked the entire planet, and now Baron Zemo is going to be able to conquer the Earth through public affection. It's friggin' genius. But of course the complicated thing that happens is these villains, and don't forget these villains are actually like C, D, E level tier characters. They're not. Yes. they're bottom rung. We're not talking like Doc Ock and people like that. No, they're kind of forgettable. And all of a sudden, they go from being losers who are constantly and easily defeated to guys who, really, really see the appeal of being good, of being loved, of being adored. They actually start to have a change of heart. But are they going to actually become real heroes? I'm making it sound so horrible and cheesy, but it's a delicious, delicious series. But that isn't Suicide Squad. I mean, what would you say would be the key difference between Thunderbolts and Suicide Squad?
Well, I think the difference is that Thunderbolts, the villains are looking for redemption. They don't want to be the bad guys anymore, and that has to do with them being C and D level villains. Is that they're so tired of being stepped on for being terrible villains that they want to make up for that and see how they can be heroes. Whereas Suicide Squad, I think they're all content in being evil and nasty. And just as a fact, I just looked it up. The Thunderbolts appeared, I think that's 8 years after the Suicide Squad started.
That's correct.
The rebooted Suicide Squad, that is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. Suicide Squad, the movie, should come first because they had the idea, the basic idea first. It's very, very cool. Now, really what we want to talk about, of course, is what the basis of your article, Spencer. Why is this movie so important in the mosaic that we hope the DC cinematic universe will be? And why is it coming so soon? Like, this is like the, this is the property that, a lot of people, including myself, never even heard of till they announced it, and we're all scratching our heads, and then we said, I better find out about this. This ain't Green Lantern, this ain't Aquaman, this isn't Teen Titans. What is this? So why are they picking it to go in the DC canon film universe so quickly, and why is it so important?
Well, I wish I had an answer for why they chose this one as the next one. But I think that to attribute why they chose this, I think it comes down to, again, Marvel is the reason, and specifically it's Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a property that, the general public had never heard of. So when they can turn around and make that into one of the most beloved movies of the year, and then, one of the top grossing movies of the year, I think that puts pressure on their competitors to, try something different. Not necessarily that they have to do it, but when they realize that audiences are okay with sort of these outlandish ideas that come from comic books, they realize that, you don't have to play it safe anymore. You don't have to do origin movies for all your heroes. You can try something kind of strange like the Suicide Squad.
Right. I mean, I would like to think on a superficial level, yeah, they're just saying, okay, team-up movies work, rapscallion characters that aren't necessarily good and true and into defending truth and justice and all that are in right now. Quirkiness is in right now, but I hope that superficial choosing of Suicide Squad is actually going to help bring us something that's quite different from anything that we've seen. And what I realised as I was reading more and more about it is that it is a fantastic in to the DC Cinematic Universe. I'm assuming, Spencer, and I could be completely wrong about this, but it seems to me that taking a cue from Batman vs Superman, we're dealing with a Batman which is certainly established. We're dealing with a veteran character. So you can imagine, as we go into that movie, it's a Batman who's had many adventures, fought many villains, and we're not going to have too many origin stories here. We're going to be dealing with a lot of characters, like Harley Quinn, for example, like the Joker, who are going to be in the Suicide Squad movie, that he's already fought and dealt with. And I guess, yeah, origin stories even for the villains are out. We're just going to have something where, you know, and I imagine, I'm scared in a way that it is going to be really riffing off Guardians, in that we're going to meet these guys in jail. We're going to get the usual suspects lineup. We're going to get the biography. We might even get what's-his-name doing the narration.
John C. Reilly.
Thank you so much. Yeah, they might even bring him in, and that's what I'm worried about. Yeah, I won't worry about it too much, because I feel like, you know, why not? Let's just cut to the chase and have a great movie. Let's not spend a whole bunch of time, like, introducing these villains and having them caught and then having them sentenced and then having them all recruited individually. You know, let's just meet them really quickly. Let's get to the adventure and let's find out about them as this story goes. Do you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. The formation, the Suicide Squad should already be a thing by the time the movie starts, I think. But then the characters that are in the film are the ones that they're just, some of them will be just joining for the first time. And it'll probably end up being where it's probably going to be Deadshot will be I would guess is going to be the audience POV, because Will Smith's playing him, and you know he's I guess he's the one they're betting all their chips on as the lead. Mm-hmm. And even beyond Deadshot, Joker, and Harley Quinn is you have Captain Boomerang, who's a member of the Suicide Squad and is a Flash villain. And what's peculiar about that is that the Flash, he'll probably be in the Justice League film, but he won't be in his own movie until 2018. So, you know, it's interesting to see, like, you know, maybe the Flash will appear at the end of Batman vs Superman, but they're going to have to talk, if he's not, they're going to have to talk about him in Suicide Squad, since Captain Boomerang has definitely gone up against him.
No, of course. Obviously, that brings up another mention. You were talking about Deadshot, that he will be the in for the audience. A lot of people, I think, certainly myself, assumed, and this was just because I was reading the articles, I was completely ignorant about Suicide Squad, and I apologise, folks. I thought that, okay, well, if the Joker's going to be in it, are we saying the Joker is going to be leading a team of guys? That's really what I thought for a second, and I feel bad about that, because that's such a stupid idea. But I guess if Deadshot is the hero, then the Joker is the villain? Is that right?
I think that's how it'll play out, but there are some rumors now floating about the script that point to another character, who I won't mention, potentially being the villain, but also that the Joker is kind of a Hannibal Lecter role in the film, and that he's in prison and maybe they go to him for information or advice, but he's not a field team member like the rest of them are.
Right. Actually, you know what? The more I think about it, I feel like that's a great idea, because I've been thinking, obviously, okay, we're in a position with the Joker. Look, the Joker, I think he's a hard character to screw up. I can't even think of a Joker appearance in media, period, that I haven't enjoyed. He's a great character. He's always fun. There's so many different ways to play him. But certainly, for the general audience, we're in a position right now where we've got two iconic Joker performances on film. One is bad enough. Imagine if, Roger Moore was playing James Bond and there have been two Sean Connerys before him. That's the kind of thing we're dealing with here. So I feel like if he's just going to make a short appearance in Suicide Squad, it's a great way of testing the water, both with Jared Leto and both with the character, to see, okay, is he going to work in this context? Is the audience going to want more of him? And of course, is there any doubt in our mind, Spencer? They're going to say, yes, more Joker. I wanted more Joker in this movie. That's what the principal complaint's going to be.
Oh, definitely. And even branching out of Joker is that this is the first time that someone will have played Harley Quinn in a live-action movie. Someone's played her in the short-lived Birds of Prey show that was on the CW, but that wasn't so much the actual Harley Quinn. It was a version of Harley Quinn. So. And I think that's one reason a character that people are going to be drawn to this movie is that, Batman fans know about Harley Quinn because she's had a big presence in the Arkham games, and, she was in the cartoon that everybody likes. So, and with an actress like Margot Robbie playing her, that's going to be a draw for people, I think. And, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out on the big screen because we've never seen it before.
I agree. In fact, I was quite shocked talking to friends over the years who I assumed had never read a Batman comic, had never seen Batman anything outside of the films, that actually she is an extremely well-known character in pop culture, period. Whether it's the character itself or just the geniusness of the name. Because it is a genius name. We take it for granted now, but it is an absolutely brilliant name. And it's a brilliant character. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I could go to my colleagues at work completely unashamedly and say, this movie that's going to be coming out, Harley Quinn's going to be in it. I wouldn't even have to say anything else, and they will immediately go, oh, they'll be yes, they will be interested right there. And especially, oh man, can you imagine if the scenes that you're talking about, these Joker scenes, if it's not, I was imagining before it's like the whole team in a room with him. Maybe it's not. In fact, it would seem silly, actually. It's probably just him and Harley together, right? That's what we want.
And that definitely gives them an opportunity to present flashbacks revealing her origin as, his psychiatrist who was swayed by his insanely devious mind and became who she was.
I hope that that's the kind of thing that they just hint at.
Yeah.
In the first movie, I hate flashbacks, Spencer. Very rarely do I find a flashback that I like. But, I think that's going to be the way to go. Man, I'm so glad I talked to you about this. I'm really excited about it. I am really, really, really keen on it. I really, really hope it works. And I have every confidence that it's going to. And as much as I would have been looking forward to a Thunderbolts movie, I'll just put it in the back of my mind. I truly believe that they can still make that in Phase 4. I want them to do that. I'll talk about that another time, folks. Can you tell I'm a fan? But now...
We should do that one episode, our pitches for the Thunderbolts movie.
We're going to do that. Absolutely, we're going to do that. We'll be on that. Right, well, let's move on then, folks. So, we've promised... Well, we've tried to promise that on our show, even in the comic book movie news, we're going to be treating things a little bit differently than just reporting on the news. Because there's enough people out there doing that. What's more fun than reporting on the news? I say predicting it before it happens. So I thought forward, of course, to Marvel's Phase 3 slate of movies. We know all the titles of their films up to summer 2019, and it's going to be years before they announce any more titles, probably, which is a shame, but at the same time, we beg them, so we can't really complain about that. So all that's left to do is anticipate these movies and dream about how cool they could be. And of course, if you want to get into casting debates, I'm just very bored doing that. But fantasy casting the director, that's fun. So tonight, we thought we'd pick one of those films on the Phase 3 slate and tell you, before it happens, who we think is the logical choice to direct it. And then we'll look like fools when it doesn't happen, but hey-ho, that goes with the territory. So we're going to do that right now, and as well as mention all our hopes and dreams for Thor Ragnarok. Now, Spencer, I'm curious. There's a lot of talk right now that Thor is the weak link in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as far as being an interesting character, or as interesting as the other Avengers, or as cool, or as having as strong solo films. What's your perspective on Thor, the movie series right now, independent of the Avengers?
Well, I couldn't tell you the last time I watched the first Thor movie, but I remember enjoying it. Now, Thor: The Dark World, I'm not a fan of. I'm pretty sure I was on the episode of Movie Moan where we talked about Thor: The Dark World. Yeah, and I felt like that movie proved that CG spectacle in that realm, that's a good pun there, doesn't make for a good film itself, and that Thor is not an interesting character unless he is surrounded by other interesting characters, as he is in the Avengers movies. So I'm not high on Thor: The Dark World. I think it's my least favorite Marvel Studios movie, definitely.
And I think everyone's starting to agree on that. Even the people who liked it at the time, I've noticed the tide starting to turn on that one after a year. I mean, Spencer will back me up. I made no bones about how much I disliked Thor: The Dark World when it came out. And yet, I've seen it like 5 times because I love the character of Thor and I love what his world brings, not just to the MCU, but to blockbuster films in general right now, because I love fantasy movies, and very few films like that get made. Like, I'll always prefer a sword fight to a gun battle. I'll always prefer an epic quest to a political intrigue plot, and the imagery that the lore of Thor brings is just wonderful. Asgard, the Rainbow Bridge, frost giants, other fantastical beasts that we haven't even met yet, like the fire demon Surtur, and Beta Ray Bill, an alien who actually gets his own hammer and inherits the power of Thor himself. I'm a fan, again, can you tell? And Thor is a guy who fights with a hammer, and that's cool to me. And he flies by hurling the hammer and using the momentum of the hammer, and it's about a god being in love with a mortal woman. Thor, to me, it's not just hyper Norse mythology. It takes the best elements of all mythology, and my frustration is that I don't think that they've made the definitive Thor film yet. But that's also the best thing about it, because it means Thor Ragnarok has that potential. And I don't know about you, Spencer, but I really loved the mission statement that Kevin Feige, president of Marvel Studios, made during that Phase 3 event last year when the film was announced. And he said what Captain America the Winter Soldier did for that character, Thor Ragnarok is going to do for Thor. Or at least that's what the ambition is. And I also think that was secret code for, we know the Dark World wasn't very good, we'll do better next time. I do believe that they can. But it all depends on how daring they're willing to go with the director. If they get another shooter for this, I might have to write it off. I don't mean to, but I don't want to. And Thor: The Dark World wasn't terrible, but it's just that I match the potential of it next to what we actually got, and it's night and day. It really, really is. Now, Spencer, I'd love for you to take this, because you're a poet, sir. I love when you describe movies. Can you tell the folks at home who are not in the know why a bunch of people cheered when the logo for Thor Ragnarok came on screen at that event? Why is that title and that word a big deal? What does it signify?
Well, Ragnarok is basically the apocalypse in Norse mythology. It means the end. It's done. Final chapter. Everyone dies. That's it. Curtain. So
poets, like I said, folks.
Well, you put me on the spot. I had to wing it.
No, I was sincere, honestly.
So, in the traditional Norse stories, it results in the death of quite a lot of the gods, including Thor, Odin, Loki, and Heimdall also dies. So
Heimdall's dog.
Yeah.
Maids, all of them. And
it basically means bad stuff is coming.
It does indeed. The fire demon Surtur, who is one of the great Thor villains of all time, is going to come and basically try and level Asgard and probably the other 9 realms as well that what we're hoping for as well, certainly our buddy Randall Maynard, who we're hoping to have on the show soon, is that Thor has a bit of help in the presence of this character called Beta Ray Bill, who is an alien initially believed to be a bad guy who fights Thor, but proves himself to be of great worth, so Odin actually forges a hammer for Beta Ray Bill called Stormbreaker, and Beta Ray Bill, this alien with a really funny head, gets to wear the Thor costume and inherit the power of Thor as well, and hopefully they're going to be in it. And obviously there's Loki himself causing more shit and stuff, and I hope that they actually kill him for reals this time. But basically it's going to be huge, it's going to be epic fantasy filmmaking. There's going to be no Earth in this movie, I'm pretty sure of that. And the question is, if this film's going to be the game changer that changes our perspective on the character in film and that hugely changes the MCU, yeah, you can't hire a shooter to make it. You need someone who's not afraid to shake things up, a director who can challenge, can push, who's not afraid to say, I'm going to kill these characters permanently. And I thought about it, and to me, the logical choice is Matthew Vaughn, director of Layer Cake, Kick-Ass, X-Men First Class, and the upcoming Kingsman: The Secret Service.
And don't forget Stardust.
I did forget Stardust. I knew I'd forgotten one. I apologize.
His actual fantasy movie.
Of course! God, I suck, ladies and gentlemen. But more importantly, he was the almost director of X-Men 3 and, for a time, Thor 1. And I'd forgotten about that for a while, because Thor took years to get off the ground. And when Vaughn was on the project, they had a script that actually took the Norse lore element of the character to the full. It was set during the time of the Vikings, and you can understand why that version didn't happen, because it didn't fit in with the plan. It needed to bring Thor to modern day Earth to bring the Avengers together. But interesting thing I found out in a great little article in recent Empire magazine is that Kevin Feige and Matthew Vaughn parted ways, in at least Matthew Vaughn's opinion, on amicable terms. Matthew Vaughn said Kevin Feige's a great guy. No bridges burned there. Trust me, folks, he's burned bridges elsewhere, but no bridges burned with the Marvel camp. So it clicked for me. The initial hurdle that, oh, well, they're not going to hire Matthew Vaughn because he jumped ship on Thor 1. Well, no, I don't actually think that. I actually think that they'd be quite open to having him back. To me, he's perfect for Thor Ragnarok. Spencer, what would you say?
Just the titles alone for Ragnarok isn't enough for me to get excited about it. But if they could get a filmmaker in there who was someone that I think could do the material well, but also, you know, make that character a presence on screen, I'd be interested. And I think Vaughn is capable of doing that. And I think contrary to how Marvel Studios used to work is they're shifting in a direction where they want filmmakers who can do that. With Thor: The Dark World, that when they got a shooter in Alan Taylor, they were like, that didn't quite work as well as we had hoped. So, you know, then they had the Russos come in for Captain America, and then they had James Gunn come in for Guardians of the Galaxy. So I think they've realized that they can get people like that to make these movies if they want, but it's not going to result in the same kind of quality and reception that they got with the two movies they put out last year. And I think Vaughn has proven that he can make comic books work on the big screen. So if he got picked for this role of helming Thor, I'd be way into that, man. I'd be excited. That's what you need to get me excited is a filmmaker like him on.
I think he's a great storyteller. I think he'll do a great job. I trust him to tell a story that I imagine in my head, that we all imagine in our heads, something where, like, I only see specific images, but I see Beta Ray Bill fighting Thor. And that's, if you don't know, folks, and you want to Google image it, by all means, look at it, and you can see that it's crazy. It's a crazy, crazy image. It is quirky. It's nothing like we've seen in Thor yet. Tonally, it's a real risk. So you need somebody who, you know, you need the guy who made Kick-Ass, which is also a movie that has to really, really struggle with some complicated tonal issues and pulls it off beautifully, especially after Guardians. Quirky is in. They're not going to be afraid to do Beta Ray Bill. They need a character like that. So they're going to be able to do that. I see images like some massive ceremony in the throne room of Asgard where everyone's assembled and Thor exposes Odin as Loki. Something like that. I see images where Thor, by himself, because he's a hero, he's got to do it by himself, faces off against Surtur. And Surtur is like, well, he's had varying heights in the comics, but we're a movie, folks, and we'll be an IMAX movie. Surtur's got to be 200 million feet high, and Thor is a speck, man. I told you, like, Marvel Studios doesn't have a Galactus yet. They don't have Galactus, but they haven't done a Galactus yet. I want to see that. Did you see Wrath of the Titans, Spencer?
No, I didn't.
That's all right. No one did. But me and Jamie did. And the only thing that I liked in that movie is there's this huge Zeus and Hades' father shows up, and he's the bad guy. He's called Kronos, and he's this huge, basically rock, fire, lava demon that is 200 million feet high. And Perseus is just a little speck and takes him on. And I loved the imagery of that. And that's the kind of thing I see in my head. But, you know, with the imagery of all of Asgard and the 9 realms falling apart while they duke it out, this movie's got to be poetry. It's got to be beautiful. And I think the only question remains what Spencer was addressing. You know, I feel like Marvel Studios, they have a good thing going right now, but make no illusions, they craft the stories. And I just think about, okay, there's a story structure that's already been decided, but they're going to be able to hopefully let a guy like Matthew Vaughn push it in certain areas. It's just a question of whether Matthew Vaughn, who is a big head, let's be completely honest about this, he is a bit of an egomaniac, is he going to conform to that, or is he not? And that's the only question mark. But if he's willing to play ball, or if he loves what they're doing, then, oh man, I'd love it.
That's definitely the question mark, though, because here's a humble brag. I did the set visit for Kingsman: The Secret Service, and when we were talking to him, I asked him about some of the changes that he had made from the comic book to its translation on the screen, and in the actual comic book, he's given a co-plotter credit with Mark Millar. So I asked him about the changes, and he goes, well, it started out that Mark and I had come up with this idea, and he goes, and then Mark went off and wrote it, and he got a lot of it wrong, in my opinion.
And I'd agree.
It's a funny answer, totally, but, you know, when there's smoke, there's fire.
No, well, he speaks his mind. He does speak.
Definitely.
But he is the kind of guy that, and there's a lot of debate about how much he has had to do with the writing of something like X-Men First Class, but he has co-writer credit on it. But he's the kind of guy who will go in and basically say, look, I'd love to do the movie, but I'm going to have to write it. And Jane Goldman's going to have to write it with me. That's just the way he works. So it's just a question of whether they're going to be able to play ball or not. So that's a huge question mark. But hopefully, when they don't pick Matthew Vaughn, but they do announce somebody else, which they're going to have to do pretty soon, I think. The movie is coming out 2017, July 2017. The end of July 2017, actually.
On my brother's birthday.
Oh, awesome. Well, let's all go. Let's all go and see it.
I got an idea for a movie. I got an idea for a movie.
Doesn't everybody?
So, welcome to another new segment of our show that will be occasionally bringing in when we have a topic for it, but certainly not every episode. This is Memo to the Executives. This is a spin-off of a series of articles on thinkmcflythink.com that I wrote, basically pitching story ideas for the franchises and sequels of tomorrow that were currently lying in limbo, lying dormant, but just waiting to be reawakened. And most importantly, you don't present your arguments in an arrogant, frustrated, out-of-work screenplay writer kind of way. I was hopefully just presenting my ideas as someone who cares about good stories, looks at a property and thinks it's got real potential as a film series, and says, let's try and figure out a way how you do it. Or maybe it's not worth doing it at all. So that's what we're going to do for you tonight, by looking at the possibilities, the pitfalls, the worth of making Ubisoft's coveted video game franchise Assassin's Creed into a film series. Now, the reason that we've chosen Assassin's Creed partly is because we don't know what the heck's happening with it right now. The position of the film is on uncertain ground. It was supposed to be coming out this August. Co-production, I believe, between 20th Century Fox, New Regency, Ubisoft Motion Pictures, whatever the hell that is, and DMC Film, with Michael Fassbender both producing and starring. Now, as far as I know, all those parties are still involved, but the film has no confirmed director, no confirmed final script, no confirmed start date for production, and it has a new potential release date of Christmas 2016. We'll see. Let's see right now, you and me, whether it's going to be worth waiting for, or even worth making. And joining us to do this is the man with the knowledge, the intel, the info, the background data, and in this case, very specifically, a man who has read one of the official screenplays for this movie to be. Well, certainly not the last one. Mr. Matt Thompson. Hello, sir.
Hey, Phil, and just for the people at home who are now tired of hearing me on this podcast, yes, I have incriminating photos of Phil. No, I am never going away. Sorry to let you guys know that.
It's episode 2, Matt. I think we could save that joke until at least mid-season, but that's alright. It's true. It's true. Now, Matt, if that is true, let me get some payback. Unfortunately, you knew this was coming. We cannot assume that our viewers have played the games and the unique and complicated nature of the game's story is going to be new to them. And that story is going to have a bearing on everything we discuss tonight. So we should very briefly explain what these games are about. Do you want to take this, or shall I?
How about this? I'll attempt to do it, and then you can attempt to do it, and somewhere in the middle we'll find some of the story.
I think the writers of the game had that very same conversation. Yes, you go ahead.
So, the question is, where do you start? Well, there was a civilization, a first civilization of, what were they, godlike beings or something, with special DNA. And now, in the present day, a company called Abstergo, who are really made up of evil people called Templars, have accessed that DNA and have a machine called the Animus, where you have genetic memories from that DNA of your ancestors, and you can go in the machine and relive their memories or something, so they can find special objects or something. Look, I just like killing people.
Okay, Assassin's Creed The Plot Take 2, I guess. I'll have a crack at this. So basically, folks, Assassin's Creed is a series of games that always take place at all points in two distinct time periods, at some unique and special point in history, and also in the not too distant future. At all times, it is about this secret war which has always been carrying out throughout the centuries between the Templars, who are always portrayed in media as evil people who want to enslave us and control our minds and our actions and all of that, and the Assassins, a secret sect of freedom fighters, I guess you'd say, the rebellion, who want to defeat the Templars. Now, the Templars' goal is to enslave us and control us by dominating our minds, and they're going to do this by finding these magical doohickeys called Pieces of Eden, which are spread around in various places. And the Pieces of Eden were left by an alien civilization which actually created all life. It wasn't God, it wasn't anything like that. It wasn't even a Big Bang, it was aliens who basically created everything, the life, the universe and everything, and they left these Pieces of Eden. And these special pieces of Eden, of course, because they're alien technology, need no explanation. They're just wonderful and magic, and they control all life and control our minds. But the problem is, Templars don't know where the fuck they are. So, what they have to do in the present, under the guise of their corporation Abstergo Industries, is they basically have this device called the Animus. The Animus basically allows somebody to go back in time and relive the memories of one of their ancestors. And the way that the Abstergo want to find the Eden is basically by kidnapping a guy called Desmond, who's one of the dullest characters in the history of video games. But the only thing that makes Desmond interesting is that he is an assassin, and his ancestors were assassins, and much more interesting people. So Abstergo kidnaps Desmond, hooks him up to the Animus, and Desmond replays his past lives and goes through wonderful time periods, the Crusades, the Renaissance in Italy, and even the American Revolution. And hopefully by reliving those memories, Abstergo will be able to locate the Eden. But of course, for purposes of commerce, Ubisoft keeps making games and still are. So as you can imagine, folks, they still haven't found much, and they still haven't taken us over yet. That's the basic conceit, and certainly the first game takes place in the time of the Crusades, when Desmond gets to live the life of his ancestor Altair, who is an assassin who basically fights the Templars in the time of the Crusades. And it's not much of a story really in that first one, but I think the point is that fans of the game and the game's story would naturally assume that the first film would follow the first game, that it was going to be a Crusades epic. We've had those before, and Fassbender would play the dual role of Desmond and hopefully make him a far more interesting character, and he would also play Altair. So, Matt, was that in the script you read?
No, it was not. I can say this. I'm actually very curious to see if Fassbender will be playing both the modern-day fellow, who is not Desmond, but is in fact named Michael Kelly in this script, and the assassin, who is not Altair, but is part of the Spanish Inquisition and named Pedro Torres. It deals with a villain who was apparently in Assassin's Creed 2. I keep forgetting Assassin's Creed. His name is Torquemada, or something like that. The idea generally is that Michael Kelly, who is Fassbender, is a bad guy. In an interesting move, our likable hero is introduced knocking over an armored car, but not just robbing it. He actually executes one of the guards inside, gets out, sees a dude on the side of the road, and then executes him. So he is captured, and in a very similar way to Terminator Salvation of all things, we see him executed. Lethal injection, executed, fade to white. But instead of dying, he wakes up at Abstergo Industries. And we have two characters, one of whom is named Joseph Truman, and his assistant named Eve, who seem very clearly based on the Vidic and Lucy characters from the first game, but aren't them for some reason, who give out the general layout from the game of, we can go through your memories, there are past patients and subjects, don't ask about them, haha, clearly nothing went wrong. So we send him back, and then Michael wakes up in the body of Pedro, who in the Spanish Inquisition, and we do the typical Assassin's Creed thing where Pedro's family is horrifically killed, and he becomes an assassin. And like the games, it's all about tracking down a glowy, all-powerful object called an Apple of Eden. And, you know, that sounds relatively simple, but the script is a complete nightmare of jumping back and forth between time periods, of trying to take game concepts. Like, in the video game, for the people who haven't played it, there's a thing called synchronization, which is basically the game's way of stopping you from murdering innocent people. So, oddly enough, the script tries to do that with this concept where, while Pedro is doing everything, patients see that Michael is sort of beside him, watching him, and Michael has to mimic his movements, and that if Michael does something different. He's desynchronized. It's a very, very odd concept, and the script never really latches onto it. But the weird thing is, it's a very long script. It's about 140 pages. It's complicated. You have a hero who's not terribly likable. You have a villain who's not terribly interesting. The Spanish Inquisition is an interesting time period. But plot-wise, it essentially amounts to, hey, we're looking for this glowy thing. Go find this guy. They find that guy who gives a slight monologue about what the glowy thing could do and says, go find this person. So they go and they find that person who gives another monologue about another thing about the glowy object, and he says, go find this person over there. And it's just a series of that repeatedly over and over and over again. For a film called Assassin's Creed, there isn't much in the way of assassinating.
Oh, man. I mean, we should, just so we can explain a little bit further, for those of you who haven't played the first game, it was one of those games that I feel is a lot easier to admire than to actually like. I certainly spent a lot of time throwing my controller at the screen during that game, because it is not inherently cinematic in any way. Basically, you have a lot of sequences where Desmond is in the offices of Abstergo, and the villain, I guess you would say, the Templar scientist, Dr. Vidic, and his assistant, spend a lot of time talking to Desmond in scenes that you cannot skip. And then you will go to the Crusade, where Altair will basically get a briefing on who he needs to assassinate by his master in scenes that we cannot skip. And then Altair will basically ride off in scenes that have no shortcut. He will ride all the way to Jerusalem, wherever he needs to go, and then he will get another mission briefing from a guy in a shop in scenes that you cannot skip. And then he will go and assassinate somebody, and that guy who he assassinates will have a very long death scene in a scene that you cannot skip.
Oh god, that threw me so much the first time I played Assassin's Creed. Why am I in this computer construct talking to this man who I've just clearly stabbed to death? Why is he speaking to me? What is going on?
Well, it was a big twist. It was a big surprise. People who bought the game, it's hard to imagine there was a time when we didn't know what Assassin's Creed was, but when people first bought that game, it was a big twist, and nobody knew. And I guess it was meant. I accepted it because I thought, oh, okay, this is Ubisoft basically trying to deconstruct the video game. You see, one of the things that a friend of mine, Justin Korthoff, who works in the video game industry, what he taught me was that video games are basically about the constant battle between player freedom and player restriction. For example, why can't you make a great Superman game? Well, one of the reasons is because Superman is all-powerful. If you give a player control of Superman, they will immediately fly off to the moon and throw it at the Earth. That's what they will do, because they will expect to be able to do that. But unfortunately, games, when they work, actually thrive on restriction. They give the player the illusion of freedom, but they place lots of roadblocks in the way to make sure that they can't just do whatever they want. Sometimes it's something as bad as an invisible wall. You think you can go to scenery in the distance, and you actually can't. In the case of Assassin's Creed specifically, like Matt was saying, it's the desynchronization, which, at best is not really a bad thing. It makes sense. You have to do what you're told, and you can't just kill whoever you want. At worst, it's if you step to the left by a centimeter during this mission, we will send you right back to the start of the mission. You
took a bad step tailing this guy. Do it again.
You play the game the way we want you to play it, and it's fucking abysmal. It's really, really interesting. I'm flabbergasted, Matt, that synchronization is actually part. This is a game concept. This is about Ubisoft played with the format of games within Assassin's Creed, and I understood it. I got it. They were breaking the fourth wall, so to speak. They were basically, you are playing a video game, and the character you're playing is playing a video game inside the Animus when he is reliving the memories, and they've played that up, and I get it, and sometimes it's smart and clever, and sometimes it's just pretentious, but I accept it for what it is. And I knew that the obviously present day sections and the historical sections would be in the film. I mean, it's just a part of the story, and people would be right in the streets, or maybe not, if that wasn't represented. But the idea that they really go in the whole hog and including game glitches in a film, really? Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, it's exactly that. Michael will mess up, he will be desynced. Pedro will jump, Michael will not, he'll be desynced. It's just, it flabbergasts me. It's not so much that I'm against importing game concepts. You can be cute about it. I mean, there are leaps of faith in the script, which is kind of a cute thing. Although nobody jumps into a hay bale, which is really disappointing to me.
That's heresy.
Yeah, they jump into water, but no hay bales. Maybe if we get a sequel. I don't understand the reasoning of it. Why you would be so completely... Why you would treat it as such sacred text in one way and yet throw everything out in another. It feels like they're ditching the things that work and keeping the things that don't.
Well, I think that it addresses one of the main riddles that has plagued the video game film adaptation genre. It's a riddle I'm still not sure we know the answer to. Is it best to make a straight adaptation of the game story and be respectful, since that story is the reason you're making or trying to make a movie in the first place? Or do you take inspiration from the ideas in the game, maybe not all of them, but some of the ideas in the game, and use them to craft your own story? I mean, clearly it's not working in this case, but what do you say, Matt? Should this have been a straight adaptation set in the Crusades, or should it be set in a different place?
I think you could do both. I mean, Assassin's Creed has enough interesting time periods you could make it work. My problem with this script, and what generally I try to look at to try to keep an even mind of the whole thing, is if there was no Assassin's Creed video game, and this was an original thing, and you're trying to make the best movie possible, would you make these choices? And I cannot in a million years think they would make them.
I will say that you shouldn't make a straight adaptation. My problem with adapting any last-gen or current-gen video game into a film is that the line has become so blurred between video games and movies. Video games have Hollywood production values. In the best instances, they have the perfect actors as voice talent, they have amazing composers to do the music, brilliant writers, the cutscenes are directed like a scene in a film, and so many games today give ownership of the story to the player, whether it's choosing a dialogue option or choosing your plan of attack and taking out an area of bad guys. The player is the writer and director. And not to mention, games have all the advantages of books and TV in being able to take as long as they want to tell a story. Translating that to film has no advantages. There is no evolution of the material. You can't even say that there would be a buzz in seeing a game translated into live action. The games are getting so good in terms of graphics that the characters are practically flesh and blood. You don't get a chill when you're seeing, Bob Hoskins in a Super Mario costume. It's different now. We've moved on. So I think it's folly to make a movie on these properties, with some very rare exceptions. One of them being Assassin's Creed. That's why we're doing this. And that's because the first game has a very intriguing plot and a very intriguing setting, but like I discussed, it's just not a cinematic game at all. Nowhere near like its sequels. I think when we talk about sequels, then things get a little bit trickier. But the first game has just really clunky, I wouldn't even call them cutscenes. Characters just stand still for 10 minutes delivering exposition. It has no cutscenes. It has no cinematic flair. And it barely has a plot. I mean, it's basically your master tells you to go here and assassinate a guy, and you do that, and eventually you'll have enough stars on your belt that he will say, now you're ready to take out the main bad guy. That is literally it. So I think you can take the bare bones of the story that's in that first game and have the freedom to make a movie. I mean, I truly believe you could, and I think that's the assumption that we all operated on. I don't know what you feel.
No, that's absolutely it. I felt like they would sort of take the basics of Assassin's Creed and run and do their own thing with it.
It seems to me that the main problem you would have in adapting Assassin's Creed 1 is, first of all, nobody likes Desmond. He's a very, very dull character. And not many people like Altair either, because he's a very, stiff character.
I will say Pedro seems to be a little bit closer to an Ezio than an Altair.
That was my point. The fact that if you want to do a literal adaptation of the series, the problem is things don't start getting good until the second game with the introduction of Ezio Auditore, who I've always loved. This is the game that takes place in Italy during the Renaissance, folks, and that was when I got into the series. And the reason why, I don't know if you had this reaction, Matt, I always felt playing Ezio, not only is he like a cool kind of romantic Zorro-esque figure, but I also felt like I was playing the world's first superhero, like a prototype Batman. And this is a guy who, as you progress through the game, you get cooler and cooler stuff. You buy better armor, you buy better gadgets. Leonardo da Vinci himself builds you a fucking flying machine, and and obviously a lot of Da Vinci's designs obviously played into the Batman lore. So I really felt like I was playing the prototype 15th century Batman, and that's why in the second game and in the third game, Brotherhood, I really got into it. I just loved being Ezio. Everyone loves being Ezio. He's still probably the favorite character protagonist in the series, and frankly I always just thought, even before you told me about this, Matt, and told me about Pedro, and I can't believe, by the way folks, I know it's been a long time since Napoleon Dynamite, I still don't think you can have a protagonist called Pedro. It just doesn't work for me. I'm just going to be smiling the whole time, but that's just me. But I just feel like they're going to want to adapt the first game, but they're going to want to skip straight to Ezio. So is that what they've done?
A little bit. He's not nearly as charming as Ezio is, but he has a very similar backstory. I never finished 2, but like you, Phil, I liked it considerably more than the first game. Ezio was a much more enjoyable protagonist. He was fun. He was charming. The gameplay was so much better. But I made it about 25 hours into 2, and I kind of just let it go because I felt like I'd peaked in terms of what I was interested in. So I'd given up on the games for a while, and then I got Black Flag, which, for the people who don't know, is a pirate game. And pirate games are awesome. Black Flag, like Assassin's Creed 2, and I think like the best of these games, has a very charming, fun protagonist. Edward Kenway in Black Flag, he's a bit like Ezio. He's a little more free-carrying. He doesn't have the tragic backstory. But he's a fun person to be around. And I feel like they're trying to do that with Pedro, but he's still very... The dialogue, there's no spark to the dialogue. He has sort of a love story with another assassin named Maria, but it doesn't work. I'm very disappointed, especially since the draft I read was written by Scott Frank, who is a writer that I very much respect. There's no spark to anything. Ezio had a spark. Edward in Assassin's Creed Black Flag had a spark. Pedro does not, as much as they try to give him one.
I have just realised an inherent problem that's going to be in this series, and why it very may well be folly to make it at all. And it depends really what your perspective is on this. But let me air this out, folks. If we're dealing with a story where your present-day character, for most of the screen time of the movie, is hooked up to a machine and replays the memories of his ancestor, that ancestor's never gonna die. He's never gonna lose. He's never gonna be in mortal danger. So that inherently removes conflict from the story. I only say that with reservation because, yes, you can say that about any comic book fucking movies that come out these days, or a James Bond movie. It's not really a problem for me, but it's going to be a nitpickety problem for a lot of people who who watch a movie that I ain't going to be worried for Pedro at all.
Just to go to the writing of it, so the whole script, they're chasing after the Apple of Eden, which is basically, in this game, is like a glowing orb, and if you touch it, basically it says you can control the minds of those around you. Well, as Pedro and Maria are going to have the final battle against Torquemada, who has the Apple of Eden, the game makes its first reference to the first civilization, saying, "Oh, we believe that we have ancestors who are more powerful than us, and that if you have the blood from them, the apple cannot affect you." Just out of nowhere. They say this literally right before the final battle is starting. Just introducing that concept right then, just so that Pedro isn't affected by the apple. It takes the stakes away. Why not go dramatic and have, Torquemada wants Pedro to kill Maria, but Pedro fights it because he's a true hero and blah, 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 blah. That would be bullshit, but it would be dramatically interesting, as opposed to, oh, by the way, you're immune to the bad thing we've been chasing because reasons.
Well, I'm trying to think here, Matt. I'm trying to think how would I make it work, because let's not nitpick, let's come up with solutions. But every time I think of a solution, I just think, no, Matrix. You can't have a situation, like, I'm trying to think, okay, is there a way where basically you can have a real threat where it's not that whoever in the Animus is reliving those memories and they've already happened. But no, they're actually not. They're making them happen. They're actually taking control of the body of their ancestor. And if they make a mistake, they're gonna die. Or if they get caught in in history, they get a cut in the real world. But no, we can't do that. That's not gonna work either, is it? I think the only thing that I am really, really fond of is, Matt, I've experienced all of the games as they've come out. But one of the things that I really, really like in Black Flag is that there is a real element of fun, not just in the historical context, the pirate world, but there's also, believe it or not, fun in the real world, because in Black Flag, folks, we get away from the boring Desmond storyline. Instead, you play as you. And what Ubisoft does, and it's really brilliant, I feel, is that they basically put you in what they imagine would be your dream job. You basically get to play as this guy who gets hired by Abstergo Entertainment. I love it. The Templars rebrand themselves as a video game company, and they basically have the most amazing office that you've ever seen, and they invite you to basically be a playtester for their latest game. They've turned the Animus into a video game console, and their latest game is the Adventures of Edward Kenway the Pirate. Arr! And you're going to play test it, and you basically, every time you play the game, you basically just get out of your bed, because they give you a wonderful little pod apartment, and then you go to your office, which is your little plot, to play the game, and you just play the game, and it's absolutely friggin' awesome. And I loved just wandering around the offices, and I just thought, you know what, this is my dream job. I'd love to work here. Even though I'm being enslaved by the Templars, I'm really, really enjoying it. It's fantastic. So I was thinking for the movie that they should do that. Let's not have okay, if we want to make it Desmond or this serial killer guy or whatever, but, have it be in that context. Have it be, in the context of a guy who's a video game tester, and someone who will become a hero later on down the line. Someone who basically gets their dream job and then has to give it all up because something far more important is happening, because the assassins need his help. I was thinking out loud, maybe that would be a great way to start the first movie. The first movie's got to be light and fun. The template holds. You've got to have the first. If you're going to make a franchise out of this, you don't start with fucking 2 murders, Matt. You have to start with light and fun and then get serious and dark later on. Don't you believe that?
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest issues in the script. There are no stakes. I mean, you mentioned the idea of Pedro not being in danger, which is true. It didn't really occur to me reading it, but that's true. But I don't like Michael very much. What's the worst that happens? Michael dies? I saw him get executed 10 pages in. Mm-hmm. Just what's the concern? Even the Templars aren't terribly well set up. I'm wondering, if you haven't played the games, if you're going to have any idea what a Templar is. Because I haven't really mentioned this. Not only is this the first game, but at the end they try to mindfuck you in terms of when you're in the Animus and when you're not.
Ah.
And it just gets very layer after layer, and it's not in a cool, oh my god, I picked this up. It's, really, we're doing this again? Really? Just the Templars are never set up as a particularly good threat. There's a point where Pedro flat out calls the assassins on the hypocrisy of being assassins who kill people and blah, 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 blah. And the script's just like, haha, yeah, but whatever, just go.
And I've just realised, Matt, that even if you go through the hook of using the Animus as entertainment, like this wonderful tool where you get to, relive historical memories but treat it as a game, that's very Total Recall-esque. And that's going to immediately bring memories of that. So you don't think of these things as comparisons when you're playing the game, because you don't see necessarily the filmic influences of it. I actually feel like Assassin's Creed as a franchise is one of those rare series which isn't overly consumed by film references. So you feel like it could work as a film, but the more I actually think about the logistics of it, the more I realise this is a bad idea. Like, for example, that's why I will never believe that Uncharted will be made as a film. I won't believe it. It's not going to happen.
Oddly enough, I have the script for Uncharted. I just haven't read it yet.
Well, good luck with that. I bet it's not 140 pages.
No, it's about 120.
That makes sense. Makes sense.
No, I don't know. I still feel like Uncharted is the easier film to make, probably because, as you're saying, it's the one that's clearly been influenced by so many movies. That it's just, we're doing that thing, and we're doing that thing, and we're doing that thing too. But Assassin's Creed, man. Assassin's Creed.
Well, folks, I think we've answered one part of the equation. Would this work as a good film? I say no. I think Matt's saying no, it's just not going to work. But that doesn't mean that the film's not going to get made. So let's just look at the other part of the equation, which is the actual economics of it, the legitimacy of making it. Is it a viable brand to make a movie that's going to sell lots and lots of tickets? Well, here's the other big problem that I always find kills these video game movies. Because, folks, for every one that gets made, one doesn't. Actually, 3 don't, if you really think about it. The other big problem that just kills these video game movies, either at the box office or just in development hell, is timing. I always find that these projects, they get momentum when one of the games comes out and it's a huge hit and makes like 500 million in a single week, and the film rights are sold and everything gets put together. In the normal time it would take to launch a potential franchise, a couple of years. But by the time that they're ready to make the movie, the timing's wrong. The game series is, at best, not as popular as it used to be. At worst, it has run itself into the ground. Now, I'm still trying to figure out where Assassin's Creed is at that particular moment on that scale. I don't know how well Unity has sold, but I can tell you this, folks. And I know, by the way, I would like to point out that I've certainly seen that people have enjoyed Unity. I know there are people out there that have enjoyed the game and feel like it is getting hugely over-trashed, but you can't deny the perception of it among gamers. It has become a byword for a rushed game that is full of bugs on release, has nothing but regurgitated ideas from the series' past games, has a story that we could care less about at this stage, and it all stems from Ubisoft's insistence on cranking out a new Assassin's Creed game every single year. As far as we know, they're not stopping. They'll have another one out this fall, set in Victorian England, and I'd like to think that the sales on that one will be abysmal, a series low, because the public have been so burned on Unity. And I just don't see a future, Matt, where Assassin's Creed the movie comes out exactly 1 year after the latest game in the series has suffered the worst sales in the franchise history. I just don't see it. What about you?
Well, the key is I think the success with making video game movies is to not make them for the fans of the game. It's kind of like comic book films. Those are hugely, hugely successful movies. You know, think how many people saw The Avengers who have never read an Avengers comic book. It's the same thing with video games. You can't make the movie for the fans, because if you do, you're completely limiting your audience. Assassin's Creed, this script feels like it's being made for fans of the game. I would say most of the video game films that I've seen feel like they're being made for fans of the game. You need to ignore that. Assume they're probably coming anyway if they're that attached to the property, and then make it for everyone else. In terms of sales, you know, I just looked in terms of the sales. It looks like Assassin's Creed follows a typical kind of movie thing where they made Assassin's Creed 3, which was a huge hit, but people weren't huge on it. Black Flag came out, dropped in sales, but people loved it. It looks like Unity's probably going to outsell Black Flag.
Of course.
But at the same time, if you follow that trend, Victory's probably dropping again. So, again, you need to make the movie for most moviegoers, and most moviegoers have not played Assassin's Creed. My gut instinct, and obviously no one would ever do this, is if you want to take Assassin's Creed and you want it to work as a film, you have to ditch the modern day storyline. That's just, in terms of making a worthwhile film on its own, as its own thing, I feel like it has to be set completely in whatever age they want to set it. Seriously, I really feel like the animus is what makes the concept very close to unfilmable. You have to ditch that if you want it to work as a movie.
Well, let me ask you the $1 million question to wrap up here, Matt. Do you think this film's going to get made?
I think at some point there will be an Assassin's Creed movie. I don't know if it will be this or with Fassbender. I feel like it's such a valuable brand that inevitably, yes, someone will make some movie called Assassin's Creed. But I don't think it's going to be this.
And unfortunately, I'm going to disagree, and I'm going to say no. Halo did not get made. BioShock did not get made.
What do you call Halo Nightfall, sir?
I don't know what to call it. Nothing polite, I guess, but it's certainly not a feature film. But by the way, folks, seriously, there is. We always do end these segments with a little bit of a plug, and I would like to plug a book that is available right now, which I didn't go into with many expectations, but I thoroughly recommend it. It's a book called Generation Xbox: How Video Games Invaded Hollywood. It is a fantastic book. The chapter on Halo the movie alone and why that movie did not get made is worth buying the book for just in itself. But it is a wonderful look at just how integrated video games and movies have been since the creation of video games itself. I won't hijack the discussion to talk about it now, but really check out that book. It's like $14 right now on Amazon. You really should buy it, folks. It's
$10 on Kindle.
There you go, folks. There you go. If you don't care about, hardback literature, buy it on your Kindle. See if I care. That's absolutely fine. But I do believe that Assassin's Creed will join the pantheon of Halo and BioShock. And heartbreaking as it is to say, probably Mass Effect. And certainly Uncharted, in my opinion. And a whole bunch of movies video game movies that will not get made. It will be interesting to see, but I just don't think it's going to happen. So, on that depressing note, we will wrap on that point, but at least we were honest, folks. But it doesn't matter what we think. What do you think? We want to know. How do you think, first of all, do you think it can get made? Do you think it should get made? And if it is going to get made, what is going to be the in that makes it work for you? A straight adaptation or a Pedro? You tell me what happens.
How do you feel about your hero being someone who's introduced murdering people?
Vote Pedro. That's all I've got to say. Vote Pedro.
If you vote for me, all of your wildest dreams will come true.
I got an idea for a movie.
Doesn't everybody?
So, folks, first of all, I know that you really, really enjoyed Cinematic Happy Comfort Food last week, so I want to apologise about the fact that we haven't been able to give you one this week. It was simply due to a delay in our special guest choosing a picture, but I can reveal for you now that Cinematic Happy Comfort Food will be back next episode. Our guest will be my good friend who's been with Movie Moan almost as long as me and Jamie, Captain Ed Hocken, and he has picked LA Confidential, which I think you will agree is a pretty sweet pick, and it certainly hits the sweet spot for me when we're talking about cinematic comfort food. So I can't wait to talk about that next time. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank our special guest for joining us, Mr. Shawn Robbins. It's been too long, sir. We've missed you.
I always miss you guys. Thanks for having me back.
And folks, we're going to be back very, very soon with Shawn. It seems so far away, but at the same time, it really, really isn't. The summer box office prediction show. It's going to be a good one. I like how we're going to be... I'd love it if we started that show with like a small fry movie, just to ease ourselves in the predictions, but round one is Avengers Age of fucking Ultron, so that's going to be a fun show.
I wonder if there will be, people will come to blows over Avengers Age of Ultron versus Star Wars The Force Awakens.
Yes, it will happen.
And then there'll be the Winter Show, which we did a preview of this week.
Oh, well, hold on. We're not going to talk about Spy first?
Oh, man. I didn't laugh once. Don't derail this, Jamie. I'm trying to say goodbye to the folks here. Happy thoughts. Not talking about Melissa McCarthy fucking... Oh, God. I'd rather watch I Spy, and that movie... No one even remembers that movie exists.
Phil, sometimes you sound like a murder-suicide waiting to happen.
He brings it out of me!
Are you going to run into a building with like a DVD copy of that? The Melissa McCarthy terrorist struck again tonight.
Oh, Matt, thank you for coming tonight.
No worries. It was fun. I'm sure I'll be back next week and the week after and the week after that, and eventually everyone else will disappear, and this will be my podcast in my room alone.
Well, the theme song. It's the Matt Show, starring you. It's Matt.
Which I will sing.
Hens love roosters, geese love everyone else loves Matt Thompson. That's me.
Not bad.
Okay, and Jamie, I love you, buddy.
Love you too, buddy.
We'll see 50 Shades at some point together. We'll do a commentary on it. That'll be fun.
Hey, we enjoyed our Never Say Never Again track.
Indeed. Right, folks, so we'll see you next time for episode 3. Keep that feedback coming. We hope you really enjoy the show. We're going to keep giving it to you the way you like it. Take care. God bless. The balcony is closed.
We give it the way you like it.
I know, I was about to say I could have said something, but I didn't.